Well, is a large chunk of Europe on the road to ruin? Well, certainly that would appear to be the case after another week of fruitless squabbling deepened the crisis building up around Greece and several other European economies. So can the bullet be dodged, and does it really matter if any country defaults? I asked Westpac's Global Head of Fixed Income Strategy, Russell Jones. Russell, interesting point in your note this week. The countries don't actually get out of a debt crisis by fixing their budgets or by growing their economy. That actually doesn't happen.
It's a very rare occurrence, but typically what you tend to see is a sort of cocktail of responses in policy. You get defaults, outright defaults, you get some effort to inflate the debt away, and again you get this tendency towards financial repression, as we say, the creation of these captive markets for various government bonds, the creation of regulations which make it easier for governments to finance themselves. You get some kind of mixture of these. There's plenty of examples of that over the post-war period. The UK, the US, Australia actually reduced the outstanding liabilities they had at the end of the Second World War very dramatically by using this kind of combination of policies.
How worried are you about Greece and the other peripheral countries? I mean, do you think we stand on the precipice of another credit crunch and banking crisis?
I think this crisis is going to rumble on. I don't expect it to disappear anytime soon. I think the policy response from European governments is, how shall I put this, incremental at best. It's a very unwieldy process. And we're not going to get a panacea, if you like, a sudden response that solves the whole problem. So I think one has to be worried. I think ultimately, though, the message of history is that at least one of these economies will end up with an outright default, perhaps more than one.
Yeah, well, some people say to me, oh, you know, Greece is one thing, but, boy, you should look at Italy's debts or Spain's. And someone said the other day, oh, Belgium's in trouble as well. Isn't that right?
I think there's more than a grain of truth. You know, the situation in Ireland and Portugal is very grim. Spain appears to have been sucked back into the crisis over recent weeks, and Italy has had this very high level of outstanding government debt for many, many years. The good news in Italy is that there's also a very, very high level of private savings to finance that debt. But the Italian economy has got some big underlying problems in terms of competitiveness and so on. And I think if we did start to see defaults in one economy, the financial markets wouldn't be too picky about attacking some of these other economies. The notion of contagion, I think, would spread very, very rapidly.
So what's your call on the euro, given the strength of Germany and the weakness everywhere else?
I think with the euro, you've got to understand there's an awful lot of political capital has been sunk into this project over the last 50 or 60 years. It's going to take a hell of a lot to break it up. I think that there's going to be a huge effort from policymakers to try and hold things together over the course of the next couple of years. From the point of view of these individual economies, I think it makes a lot more sense to default within the Eurozone rather than outside it. I think that the problems they would encounter would probably be even more dramatic and even more painful for their respective populations if they exited the Eurozone anytime soon.
So what's the next thing our viewers should watch for? I mean, how should we approach observing what's going on in Europe?
Well, I think the next thing you'll see is an increase in the bailout funds, in the financial support for some of these economies, and in particular Greece. What you'll see as an aside to that, if you like, is a lot of conditionality attached to that additional financial support. In the Greek case, for example, we're seeing this emphasis on them selling more government assets off in return for that financial support rather. The key consideration here going forward is going to be conditionality.